Hi, everybody, and welcome to the IC Topic Chats for today. It's January 9th, and this is one of my kind of crazy let Matt go off in a corner and come up with crazy ideas sessions, where if you know me, you know a handful of things about me. I spend a lot of time with group exercise. I've run marathons, and over the last handful of years, spent time kind of thinking about Stoic philosophy. And I know that sounds really boring because most of us took that mandatory philosophy course in college that we slept through, and I literally did that. I literally went to class and fell asleep with a drool on the desk in the philosophy courses because they were totally boring. And I couldn't figure out why I was there, and I had to take it, and I felt bad for the faculty member because nobody cared what he was saying. But I have a new lease on philosophy, which I'm going to spend some time talking today. And it's kind of built off of last week's presentation on why do we do independent consulting. But at a certain point, you get to a point in life and you go, yeah, but, and you have that yeah, but moment. And maybe you figured out how to connect with clients and you figured out how to keep the ball rolling and hire employees, and then you're sitting there going, but is this all there is? And that's where I think for me philosophy came into mind. But anyway, as a recap of last week, I made a point to talk about why do consulting. And let's see, I can't get anything to advance. There we go. So I talked about who new consultants were, and I'm just going to skip through these. I'm not going to cover these slides because I covered them last week. And then I talked about why people consult, because they like this idea of independence and they like this idea of flexibility of time, and particularly like this idea of making money. Um, and these are wonderful things. And I talked about why I love that. And I talked about how used to go to lunch with my daughter, who was a block away at the elementary school, and I didn't have to ask anybody's permission, and it was fine. And I get to create. And since then, I've realized with my partner in life and business, we get to create this business that is a reflection of who we are, and those are wonderful things. And then I talked about the worries about the uncertainty of what could happen. A lot of us are feeling that right now because we feel like there's a lot of disruption, and particularly in the United States with turnover in the federal government administration. Um, then we realize, hey, oftentimes we have too much work and not enough balance. Um, and we don't know how to manage all those things. I can't take on more work because I'm a one person shop, but I don't have enough money to hire a person, is one of those quotes. Um, I could be working all the time. And then a lot of the other worry is how do we do marketing and soft skills? That sort of thing. But we get over that and we realize with there is enough money to be made out there, and this is the median revenue over time, the number of years you've been doing this, and you see after 5 years, a lot of us have figured out how to do this. That's for a one person shop. You can see the median is there. And actually, no, it's not. This is multiple people. This gross revenue, total revenue. And these are wonderful things. And so I I've lived this. We have a lot of people who've responded to the survey from 2022 and another one that we did in 2015, and they're consistent with all that. And I cover these surveys and all these in our sessions. But then you go, yeah, but what else is there? So that's where I came to philosophy. And philosophy is an activity people undertake when they seek to understand fundamental truths about themselves, which is what I was trying to do. Like, yeah, but what else is there? And maybe this is the 50, how old am I? 54, 53. I can't even remember how old I am. The 50-year-old man in me going, but there's got to be more to this, right? Because you get to a point where a lot of things come into place. And then I found Stoic philosophy. And I know that sounds really terrible, even worse than philosophy, because what's Stoicism mean to you? Stoic is you get this idea of this person who's just stern all the time, right? And they have a stiff upper lip and they just kind of embrace and go through they've got grit or whatever. And so we've got images like these here, and that's Marcus Aurelius on the bottom. But in today's world, if you get into this and you type in Stoic philosophy, you're probably going to come up with a picture like this. And this is Ryan Holiday. Ryan Holiday is quite literally the wonderkind, a wonder kid of Stoic philosophy. He is, by my estimate, the foremost promoter of Stoic philosophy today. And it's because he found at an early age, in his early 20s, college dropout, very successful in marketing, author of 12 books and podcasts and all the things and speaking tours. But he started writing these books, and every one of these are wonderful. And they're wonderful because he shares good approaches to life, i.e., Stoic philosophy, through stories about individuals we all know, like Toni Morrison, Martin Luther King, Jimmy Carter, who, is today is a special day in the federal government for Jimmy Carter. In fact, my program officers from the Department of Defense can't meet with us today because they were told they're not allowed to do anything today in honor of Jimmy Carter. Queen Elizabeth, Harry Truman are people that he covers in his books. But I would say, if you were going to start with one book, which is the book I started with, I would think about Discipline as Destiny, because it just gives a lot of direction. And to me, it gave me direction in who I am, what I'm trying to do, how to just kind of embrace the daily grind, because I think that's something that have struggled with over time. Just what is it? Why am I doing this? How am I supposed to get through this day? And I look at my long list of things I have to do, and I'm trying to find enjoyment with it, and just what does it all mean, right? And honestly, why are we thinking about this? Because in many ways, if you understand this Maslow's hierarchy of needs, at a certain point you get beyond the safety and physiological needs. We get to the point where we're paying our bills, we can afford our car. Hopefully, we're not going out and buying Maseratis and stuff. And we're at that place of love and belonging, esteem, or perhaps even self-actualization. And we're trying to just understand what the big deal is, how we go about this. And so we've got our business, our consulting practices, and they're maybe you're a one-person operation and you've got enough, or you've got, like me, you know, 13 full-time people and students and subcontractors and stuff like that. But I'm going to take a quick aside, and I'm going to talk about Robert Kiyosaki, because I think this has been a big, very informative for me over time, is to think about Robert Kiyosaki's ideas on wealth, because wealth, we want to think about it as money, right? We want to be able to afford things. We want to pay off our house. We want to put money in an IRA. We want to buy a Lexus or a boat or a second house or whatever. And those are fine things, and I'm not judging it. But he says, stop thinking about wealth as money. Define what your lifestyle should be, is how you want to live your life, and think about that in the way of time. So let me talk about this a little bit. Time is your wealth. Now, I know people say time is money. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is you literally can define how wealthy you are in terms of time. If you stopped working today, if you just said no to your clients and all your contracts dried up, how long can you live without getting a job, without working? That's the time I'm talking about. So if it's one day, you're not very wealthy. If it's a year, that's pretty good. If you could live for the rest of your life and never work again, you are as wealthy as anybody. But that's based upon what are your expenses, right? How much does it cost to live your life? Obviously, we have things like insurance, we got to pay for gas, we got to get groceries, we got to pay for student tuition, college tuition. That's where I'm at in my life. Or daycare, if you have children, younger children, that's a very expensive thing. Actually, interesting thing. When I was a director of institutional research at a university, I looked at how much students were paying to go to college, and I compared that to my own children in daycare, and we were paying more for daycare per student for my kids than students were paying to go to the college. And I thought, that's messed up. But anyway, getting back on wealth, a big realization for me was I can define my wealth by how much time I can live without working. And so that was good. But anyway, that's an aside. But the reality, getting back to this whole idea of what else is there, you realize that your desire to get that thing, to get that Lexus, and when you get, I've never owned a Lexus. I've thought about it recently, but you get that Lexus and it's wonderful. You desire it. So you desire, you strive to get it, following this treadmill here. You strive to get it, then you get it, and it feels awesome, but it wears off. And this is the whole happiness conversation that a lot of us have heard about if we follow podcasts. You enjoy it, but something happens. You get over it. And then you said, well, this Lexus is awful nice, but what would be even nicer is, I don't know, some Mercedes Benz or something else that's even fancier and even nicer and drives even faster and is even more comfortable. But guess what? That wears off too. There's no end to it, and that's the treadmill piece of it all. Hedonic adaptation. I love the treadmill better because you can't get off it. You keep running forward, but you never get there. There's no I've arrived, and that's the part that's really happy. I mean, that's really that part about happiness that really messes with you because we keep focusing our happiness on these extrinsic things, and that's where we need to take it more intrinsically. So getting back to Demi Moore, we need to put down that measuring stick. And so I didn't talk too much about Demi Moore, but I put it in the introduction in the email to get you guys to alert you to this session. But we need to put down the extrinsic and focus on the intrinsic. What are those meaningful events in our lives? And plus, another thing that happens here is success breeds softness. And this is the quote from Ryan Holiday, who I was just talking about with regard to Stoic philosophy. Because how many times have we seen these Silicon Valley types out there telling us everything we need to know because they're successful, but they don't know what they're talking about because they don't have that lived experience, or they haven't, particularly, we know they spend time telling us how we should be operating nonprofits, but they don't understand anything about nonprofits. They're just very rich. So they're soft in those ways, but I worry about that in my own work. And so on a more physical end of things, I've also taken a lot of inspiration from Michael Easter in this comfort crisis, which is this idea that we are living a very comfortable lifestyle. We have everything we need. We can get in our soft cars and drive to our fast food restaurants, and we can drive home and sit on our soft couch and watch our Netflix. And that all feels like success. Like, that's wonderful. It's easy, but easy is actually misleading us. Because, and then getting back to our work, and this is where I think I was going off on a crazy tangent here, but in our work as consultants, at some point you realize the reward for good work is, well, more work. And that's actually something we should be embracing and understanding, because at a certain point, you're going to work hard, so you might as well enjoy what you're doing. And that's what I said last week too, with regards to starting an independent consulting practice. If you decide you want to be, if you want to, you don't want to do this, you're going to work for an employer, you're going to work for a university, which was my case. I was going to work really hard one way or another. You might as well work hard towards something that's going to be beneficial towards you and fulfill you and give you that flexibility, give you that extra money. I've run probably 60 marathons, including one in every state. And there's something that you realize after doing it a couple of those times. And I'm not entirely certain I know why I did all of them. I think it was this idea of chasing a big goal over a long time, which is kind of what I'm also doing with with this firm and my focus towards developing it and working with my partner towards it and supporting the staff. But you realize that when you train for a marathon, it's really not doing it so that you can finish and have the medal. You do it for the journey of getting to the finish line. And that's kind of mental. And in many ways, that's the point of owning an independent consulting practice or a firm like I do. At a certain point, you realize the joy is in the mundane. It's the day to day. So I know I've been going off and I'm doing this weird tangent. This whole thing is just Matt's musings, but I do have 5.5 suggestions for you. And I know these are going to sound this you're going to get this in the wellness section of the New York Times where I do, but I take these things very seriously. I really think if you do these things, they're going to help support all the rest of these things that you're trying to do in life. You should be sleeping. I mean that. I know that Netflix marathon sounds wonderful, but you got to go to bed. You got to get some sleep. And if you don't, you're not going to be fresh the next day. You're going to be grumpy. You're not going to think straight. You're not going to be able to react and get all the things done that need to happen during the day, and be ready for the successful things that can happen. You need to exercise. Everybody does. I certainly exercise a lot more than 150 minutes a week. It's probably on average an hour a day. And it's not hard stuff. And I found a lot of enjoyment in it, and I continue to find different ways to do it. I used to strictly run, and I don't recommend that. I recommend a balance of different things, but you do need to exercise and get out and do things, even if it's just walking. And I ruck, which is walking with a weighted backpack. I think it's a wonderful way to get more than a walk in, but you don't get all the pounding of running. You need to find that group of non-work friends to hang out with, to spend time with, um, and perhaps away from your family too. If you can do this with your spouse or your partner, that's great, but also might even be better to have it away from that. You should have both. I mean, I think that's great, but those non-work friends that fill you up, you need to embrace the mundane, because in many ways, the mundane, those little things about I spent 3 or 4 hours yesterday thinking about contracts all day long yesterday. And I've got to embrace that, because that's kind of the point of that's the work. That's the more work that we get, by doing this. But it's those little mundane things that help feed the firm to allow me and the rest of the people in our firm to grow and develop within our practice. Think about moderation in all things. And I don't want to get too high on the horse, here, but I think a lot about I've given up alcohol, entirely, but moderation, you can't go too extreme. You need to stop working. You can't work more than 8 hours a day on a regular basis. You do need to do that. And that's actually a piece for the folks that we work with our teammates. I look at that. I don't want people working 12 hours a day on a regular basis. It's going to happen. And we give comp time so that people can take less time next week if they work too much time this week. So, but moderation. And finally, you need to connect with your work peers. And what I mean by work peers, I mean you guys in many ways. The people that I work with, or my peers within consulting and independent consulting. All right, so Matt's musings over. Here's our sessions coming up. Shari Smith is going to be with us next week to talk about why write a book, which is going to be great. I'm going to send out something about that next week. She gave me a handout. Looking forward to that. Corey Newhouse is going to be with us to talk about developing client guides, and you're going to love this, because the way she develops them are ways to effectively give back to her community, but also create it as a business development tool. I'm going to talk about this idea of starting a firm. So it's kind of like the counterpart to why start an independent consulting practice? Why would you want to go from a solo practice to a firm? Anyway, you can see some of the other ones here. Subcontracting fair is highlighted in yellow because that's one where we'll ask for signups in advance, and it'll also be longer. Last year, it was about an hour and a half, pushing 2 hours. So you want to schedule a little extra time for that one. And let's see the other topics there. So with that, I'm going to stop recording, and I would love to hear what you guys are thinking, and I would love to see how you're putting down the measuring stick and embracing the mundane and thinking about what does this all mean?